The Emperor of Mankind forged 20 sons to be his generals, his conquerors, but there was one he feared. Not a warlord, not a monster. He feared a scholar whose power wasn't just for the battlefield. It was a force that could rewrite the future of the Imperium itself. How did the most brilliant of the Primarchs become the architect of his father's greatest failure? This is the story of Magnus the Red. In the grand, tragic theater of the 31st millennium, the fall of the Imperium pivots on one story above all others, that of the Crimson King. It's a tale of ambition, pride, and good intentions paving a road straight to hell. Magnus was a psychic titan, his power second, perhaps, only to the Emperor himself. He wasn't just another weapon for the Great Crusade. He was a key, designed for a very specific purpose that would have secured humanity's future. But that same power made him uniquely dangerous. His story is a chilling reminder that the greatest threats don't always come from malice, but from the unwavering belief that you know best. Before we dive into the archives, if you enjoy these deep dives into the figures that define the 41st millennium, consider subscribing. It's your support that lets us keep unearthing these epic tales. Now, let's begin. To understand the fear Magnus inspired, you have to understand the glorious purpose he was made for. When the infant Primarchs were scattered, Magnus landed on Prospero. It was a world of scholars and psychers, a place where his innate psychic gifts weren't just tolerated, they were celebrated. He thrived, mastering his power and becoming the king of a society that valued knowledge above all else. When the Emperor found him, he didn't find a barbarian warlord. He found a fellow intellectual, a master of arts most of humanity had forgotten or condemned. The reunion was a meeting of minds. The Emperor saw in Magnus an heir to his grandest designs. His legion, the 15th, known as the Thousand Sons, reflected their Primarch perfectly. They were scholars and artisans, and some of the most powerful psychers in the Imperium. But they were also cursed from their very inception by a horrifying genetic flaw, the flesh change, which would gruesomely mutate his sons without warning. It was a problem that would define Magnus's future. Deep beneath the Imperial Palace, the Emperor was working on his ultimate gambit, the Imperial Webway Project. By creating a human-controlled network within the Webway, he could unite his sprawling empire with safe, instantaneous travel, completely bypassing the dangers of the warp. This would sever humanity's reliance on the Immaterium, and in doing so, shield it from the corrupting influence and demonic predation of the Chaos Gods. But this colossal undertaking needed a psychic gatekeeper of unimaginable power to sit upon the Golden Throne and manage the project. And while it was never explicitly stated, it is heavily implied that this role was destined for Magnus the Red. He was believed to be the only Primarch with the psychic might to endure the throne, a task that would have incinerated even a psyker as powerful as Malcador the Sigillite. For Magnus, it wouldn't have been a prison, but the ultimate library, a nexus from which he could safeguard humanity's future, while his mind roamed the cosmos. He was the keystone in the arc of the Emperor's grand design. But for all his potential, Magnus carried the seeds of his own downfall, a tragic mix of good intentions and profound arrogance. The source of his desperation was the flesh change. This degenerative flaw in his legion's gene seed was a relentless horror. He loved his legionaries like sons, and watching them twist into monstrous forms was a torment he could not bear. This drove him to seek a cure by any means necessary, even if it meant defying his father. The Emperor had been clear. Do not delve into the deep mysteries of the warp. He promoted the imperial truth, a secular creed that denied the existence of gods and daemons, painting the warp as a natural phenomenon to be navigated with care. Magnus saw this as a dangerous oversimplification. He saw the warp as a great ocean of knowledge, and was convinced he was wise enough to sail its currents without being devoured by the monsters in the deep. In his quest to save his sons, he reached into that ocean and made a deal with a powerful entity, believing he'd outsmarted it. In reality, he had been played by Tzeentch, the chaos god of change. The cure was just a temporary fix, a devil's bargain that bound his legion to the very power that would one day consume them. He sealed this pact by sacrificing his right eye, a physical reminder of the price of forbidden knowledge. His hubris wasn't one of malice, it was intellectual. He genuinely believed he knew better than the Emperor. He saw his father's commands not as wisdom, but as dogma. And that was the critical flaw in their relationship. The Emperor feared Magnus because he knew his son's insatiable curiosity would lead him to break the one rule that mattered most: do not treat with the powers of the warp. Magnus simply couldn't accept that some doors are meant to stay closed. This story is a complex tapestry woven across dozens of books. If you're enjoying this breakdown and want to support more content like it, consider joining our Patreon. You'll get access to exclusive content and our community Discord. It's the best way to help us keep the arcane libraries open. And now, back to the point of no return. The tension between father and son came to a head at the Council of Nicaea. On paper, it was a debate about the role of psychers in the legions. In reality, it was the trial of Magnus the Red. On one side stood Primarchs like Leman Russ and Mortarion, who argued that psychic power was nothing more than dangerous sorcery. On the other, Magnus argued passionately for the controlled mastery of the warp. He advocated for the librarian program, believing it was the key to humanity's evolution, but his arguments were dismissed. The Emperor, having witnessed the horrors of the warp firsthand for millennia, delivered his final judgment, the Edicts of Nicaea. All librarian divisions were to be disbanded. The use of battlefield psychic powers was forbidden. For Magnus and his 1,000 sons, this wasn't just a censure, it was a rejection of their very being. He bent the knee, but in his heart, he was convinced his father had made a terrible mistake. The true disaster, the moment that shattered the Imperium's future, came shortly after. While on Prospero, Magnus's powerful foresight gave him a terrible vision. His brother Horus, the War Master, had fallen to chaos and was planning a rebellion. He had to warn his father, but the Edicts of Nicaea had cut him off. An astropathic message was too slow, too insecure. There was no time to take a ship. Driven by desperation, Magnus decided to prove his father wrong, once and for all, by using the very power he was forbidden to wield. He gathered his most powerful sorcerers and cast his astral form across the galaxy, aiming it directly at the Imperial Palace. He just wanted to deliver his warning in person. But Terra was protected by immense psychic wards, a shield the Emperor had built to protect his secret webway project. Magnus's astral projection, juiced with forbidden power, didn't slip through the wards. It smashed through them like a psychic battering ram. The shockwave was a cataclysm. It shattered the delicate machinery of the human webway, ripping a wound into reality beneath the palace. Daemons poured through the breach, turning the Emperor's greatest hope into a gateway to hell. In his desperate attempt to save his father, Magnus had just destroyed his life's work and sealed his fate. On Terra, the Emperor didn't get a clear warning. He felt a psychic apocalypse. From his seat on the Golden Throne, he witnessed the catastrophic failure of his secret project, the very project he had withdrawn from the Great Crusade to finish. The message from Magnus was lost in the psychic storm of his own making. All the Emperor knew was that his son had flagrantly disobeyed a direct order, used forbidden powers, and, in doing so, had undone centuries of work, dooming humanity to an eternity of war. In that moment of rage and grief, he didn't see a son who made a mistake. He saw a traitor. The Emperor's wrath was absolute. He ordered Leman Russ and his space wolves to bring Magnus to Terra to answer for his crimes. But the now corrupted War Master Horus intercepted the order. He played on Russ' hatred of sorcery and twisted the command from one of arrest to one of annihilation. What followed was the Burning of Prospero, one of the greatest tragedies of the heresy. The Space Wolves, along with Custodians and Sisters of Silence, descended on the planet without warning. Tisca, the City of Light, was put to the torch. At first, Magnus, devastated by his own folly, forbade his legion from fighting back. He accepted the destruction as his penance. But watching his world burn and his sons be slaughtered by the wolves, his resolve broke. He unleashed his full, terrifying power. It was too little, too late. Facing annihilation, Magnus was given one last choice. Tzeentch offered salvation. To save what was left of his 1,000 sons, Magnus accepted, surrendering himself and his legion, body and soul, to the god of sorcery. With a final, massive psychic effort, he transported the survivors from the ashes of Prospero directly into the Eye of Terror to the newly formed planet of the sorcerers. He saved them from the wolves, but damned them for eternity. So we come back to the central question. Why did the Emperor fear Magnus? It wasn't because he thought Magnus would raise an army against him. That was Horus's role. He feared Magnus the Scholar, the arrogant genius who couldn't understand that some knowledge is too dangerous to learn. The Emperor's fear was prophetic. He knew that Magnus's uncontrolled pursuit of power could, and did, undo the single greatest hope for humanity's salvation. Magnus didn't just break a rule. His actions shattered the psychic wards of Terra, destroyed the Imperial Webway project, and bound the Emperor to a living death on the Golden Throne. The ultimate tragedy is one of profound irony. In his desire to save his sons from a genetic curse, he delivered them to the very god who had cursed them. In his attempt to warn his father of betrayal, he inflicted a wound on the Imperium more grievous than anything Horus could have managed on his own. The Emperor feared that his most brilliant son had the capacity to be the architect of his greatest failure. And he was right. What do you think? Was Magnus a victim of fate, or was he the master of his own damnation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you found this chronicle enlightening, like the video and subscribe for more lore from the 41st millennium. Thanks for watching.